This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. Trust me, I'm like a smart person. I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius. I had the best words, tolerated. I know words. Mike Pounds. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation. But there's no better word than stupid. Anonymous, really anonymous. I'm very highly educated. One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. Had the best words. God bless the United States.
Around the nation, PYD Nation, Jeff Waldorf here. Welcome to the show. It's Friday. It's Friday the 13th. So, I don't know if that has to do with just all the garbage that's happening today. But nonetheless, yeah, Friday the 13th. What a day. And what a day indeed. And I'm not sure what the heck happened to my intro, but that just zoomed past, like, way, way too fast. Like, I don't know what the hell just happened there. But, okay, so that's just one of the many things that I have to work on, all that stuff. So, look, anyway, welcome to the show, like I said before. It's going to be a good show today. We are going to, of course, talk about COVID-19. So, interesting news on that I didn't see on Wednesday. YouTube decided that they are going to no longer instantly demonetize every video that mentions coronavirus. But, like, it all depends, right? So I'm still going to be careful and still call it COVID-19. Technically, that is the name. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the reaction, including who President Trump blames for the piss poor reaction by the government on the COVID-19 outbreak. We've also got the continuation of the destruction of the social safety net by the Trump administration. We've got Jerry Falwell Jr. Cooking up conspiracy theories on Fox and Friends. We've got one example of the Trump administration keeping an Obama regulation. Now, that's a surprise. That should be a surprise. Totally a surprise for me. The fact that they've decided to keep an Obama era regulation. But wait, you're never going to guess why. Yeah. And then we've got AOC asking the important questions. Hey, why is it that we can bail out the banks, but we can't seem to bail out the students or anyone else? So, look, that's fun stuff. That's what we're going to talk about today on the show. Also, guys, on Wednesday, I was actually on and did an interview with Mythicist Milwaukee, right? And so these are a group of people who are it ranged between conservatives. There's progressive on there. Mike, he's fantastic. Bernie Sanders supporter, but then you've got libertarians, you've got some conservative Republicans. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to have some conversations. So they invited me on to have a conversation, and it was excellent, actually. So if you guys want to check that out, check out that interview that I had. It's really good. I had a lot of fun doing it, and we had a great discussion on Medicare for all, the progressive movement, mainstream media, and how terrible the corporate media really is. And how much you need to support independent progressive media. So look, all that stuff, very interesting. Great interviews, and I do enjoy talking with people. In fact, at some point, I'm hoping to get in to talk with Mark Thompson on the Edge with Mark Thompson. So that should be fun. I don't know when that's going to be, but hopefully I can, get something set up here very soon, and I'll let you guys know on that. All right. So that said, look, before I get into these stories, we're doing a fundraiser. So background, I hate fundraisers. I effing hate them with my entire passionate being. I hate asking for money. So this is something that I despise doing. Just so that you know, like, I hate fundraisers. I hate them. And so I don't do them unless they're absolutely necessary. And so, which brings me to the fact that it's absolutely necessary. So look, what I'm going to do in the link in the description of the video of the live stream, and also in the chat, I had linked to a fundraiser, right? So we're doing a GoFundMe campaign to basically keep the lights on, right? So look, you guys know what's been happening here is YouTube changed their algorithms to basically crush independent media. We've been barely scraping by since September is when they really made that change. And then it really went into massive effect October, December, January. And we've had one of the lowest months that we've had in a very, very long time. And so we're not doing well. Look, I was hoping that Patreon, we could get up to $2,000 a month to be able to continue to do the show, fund the operations, and basically keep me in a house and keep the lights on and all that stuff, and still allow me to go to events and cover those. So there were some recent Bernie Sanders events here in Michigan I wasn't able to go to. Why? Couldn't afford gas. And so it was one of those things where, look, we need help. YouTube revenue sucks. It's terrible. They've cut 2/3 of our views, 2/3 of our revenue. And so what do, right? When that situation happens, not a whole lot. So I got to count on you guys. And so I hate asking. I hate everything about this. But look, you got to do what you got to do to stay on the air and to continue, hopefully, allowing me to continue to inform you guys. Because look, if you think that I'm doing a good job and you're able to donate, do so. Because, I think that I'm doing my best to try to keep you guys informed and to let you guys know about the mainstream, mainstream media narratives and to try to debunk that stuff and to go after corporate Democrats and disastrous Republicans and all that stuff. And I think we need as much independent media as we can get. But it's expensive to do this, and you got to pay the bills. And so that's why I'm asking. So thank you guys for, helping us out and trying to keep us on the air. And look, hopefully we can find a more long-term solution. I am working with other companies. There's a podcasting company that hopefully we're partnering with that will get stuff up and running soon. So you guys can get a proper podcast of the show and not just, members. And, also building up our Facebook page, facebook.com/TYTNation, to get an extra revenue stream there. But until we get to those points of even finding some, other partnerships, we're really, leaning heavily on you guys. And so if you appreciate what we do, consider going to that GoFundMe and helping out so we can keep doing this. Okay. Elwell. Oh my God. Thank you, Elwell. She says, I work for the hospital in Washington State. Oh my God. You're like right in the middle of like a COVID outbreak. And says the cases of COVID are exploding here. People are panicking. Thank you for your show. I watch every weekday. Well, thank you so much, Elle. I do appreciate it. Please stay safe. My wife works in a AFC home. And so those are the places where it's the worst. And those are the people that are most at risk. Our nurses, our medical professionals, and people on AFC staff, while everybody else is saying, we've got a quarantine, we're not going to go to work, or they're getting laid off, medical professionals are always the first ones there. And you guys are the bulwark. You were the first on the scene. And you deserve all the respect in the world for facing down those threats head on and being there for the people who need that. And so thank you, Elle, and thank you to all the people who are watching that are also in the medical field. Like, all respect. Okay. So let's move on. Let's get into the show. Enough e-begging, right? As some people will call it. I don't know what Rockfin is. I'm not sure what that is. And I don't deal with crypto. Sorry, I don't deal with crypto. I don't even know how it works or how to do it or anything like that. So yeah, we don't do crypto here. All right. Anyway, now let's get into the show. Thank you, Bonnie. I do appreciate that. All right, let's get into this these stories here. Now, President Donald Trump started off Friday after a disastrous week by blaming former President Barack Obama and the CDC for some of his response to the COVID-19 outbreak. Now, the president accused Obama of bungling the response to H1N1, remember swine flu, back in 2009, and complained that he had made changes to the CDC that stopped Trump's response to COVID-19. Well, what is the Trump response, right? Basically to call it fake news and to downplay it as much as possible. Now, Trump tweeted this out. He said, "For decades, the CDC looked at and studied its testing system, but did nothing about it. It would always be inadequate and slow for large-scale pandemic, but a pandemic would never happen, they hoped. President Obama made changes that only complicated things further." You notice, I believe that this is all projection, right? That looks like projection to me. It would always be inadequate. So don't blame me because it was Obama and they hoped that it was that they were not going to have a pandemic. No, you were hoping there wasn't going to be a pandemic. And then when it happened, you're like, we got to protect the markets. I got to protect the markets, got to protect the markets. That is the number one thing that we have to look out for. This is the number one thing you have to do. Why? Because if the markets go down, then I don't have a case for re-election because I've literally done nothing else but give rich people more and more money. So again, understand, total projection. But then he goes into lies about the response to swine flu. He said their response to the H1N1 swine flu was a full-scale disaster with thousands dying. Just about over 1,000 people died, roughly from H1N1 in America. By the way, so there's no thousands of people, right? No. Okay. He also says, and nothing meaningful done to fix the testing problem until now. The changes have been made in testing will soon be happening on a very large scale basis. All red tape has been cut. Ready to go. What a dangerous liar. But it all comes down to this, right? What about me? Don't blame me. Don't blame me. You can't blame me at all. No, it's not my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. No, it's all those guys. Obama, his fault. I'm the one that actually is doing fantastic. And I am fixing Obama's problems because Obama is terrible. No, here are the actual facts, right? So look, Obama's response to H1N1 and later on Ebola was actually pretty good and didn't touch off the kind of panic that we're seeing right now today. Of course, there was a little bit of panic. There always is a little bit of panic, but right now, it's way worse than I remember during H1N1, and especially Ebola, because I remember covering the Ebola crisis. So now, what happened? What was this response? Well, Obama's acting director of Health and Human Services declared H1N1 a public health emergency on April 26, 2009. That was only when 20 cases of H1N1 were reported in the country, had been confirmed. There were no deaths with swine flu at that time. Still, public health emergency. Okay. Now, more. 2 days later, the administration decided that it would make an initial funding request to H1N1 for Congress. So that was April 28th, 2009. Now, they got $7.65 billion allocated for a vaccine and other measures. Now, notice the timing on here. This is very important, the dates, right? H1N1 was declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization on June 11th, 2009, meaning that the Obama administration took preventative measures and actions at least 2 months prior to it being declared a pandemic. Now, that's very important, right? So you had this measured response already. Okay, let's get ahead of this thing, says the Obama administration. Let's get some funding. Let's get some research into a vaccine. Let's do some containment measures. Let's get this thing figured out before it really starts to spread all over the country. And very importantly, let's get testing, right? Let's make sure we've got testing kits for everybody so that we can really, prevent this from, look, freaking out the markets. Look, if you're a president, you obviously don't want to freak out the markets. And so what happened? You took a very measured response. Not only that, but I also do believe that President Obama, unlike Donald Trump, cares about regular citizens and the stock market. And so you don't have that with Donald Trump. His entire focus is on markets, protecting myself. Okay. So now, the Obama administration, as I said, they declared a public health emergency more than 6 weeks before the pandemic designation. That's also important too. Now, on October 24th, 2009, 6 months after his administration declared it a public health emergency, Obama declared it a national emergency. And at that point, H1N1 had killed more than 1,000 American lives, according to the CDC. And when Obama made that declaration, the New York Times reported that thousands of people were lining up in cities across the country to receive vaccinations because, again, that preparedness, right? Federal officials acknowledged that their vaccination program had gotten off to a slow start, with some states having requested 10 times the amounts that they had been allotted. And so, look, there were issues, right? Small issues. But when we look at what's happening now, with it being a global pandemic, we're still about a year away from a vaccine because we didn't start preparing for this. We were completely unprepared. And now, just today, President Trump is declaring this a national emergency. I mean, look, terrible response, right? So now Trump declared COVID-19 a public health emergency on January 31st, right? Also prior to any deaths in the United States. Any U.S. citizens who had been to China's Hubei province, the source of the outbreak, in the previous 14 days were subjected to 14 days of mandatory quarantine if they travel back to the United States. Now that is good. That's not bad, right? It is a response. But obviously not a great response. Not as much as Obama had done. And besides, Obama's response had prevented a massive spread of H1N1, as well as, of course, could be expected in a pandemic. Millions of people did end up being positive for swine flu, but we had testing measures and we had vaccines that were made available at the time that it was really declared a pandemic, and not so long after. But now we're in a completely different situation. President Trump has bungled it in almost every way possible. And it's amazing, right? But of course, look, that's what Donald Trump's biggest record is. And he might be remembered for this more than anything, of how he bungled this entire thing, his record of complete and total incompetence. And so we have a pandemic. We don't even know how many people are infected, by the way. We don't have testing, right? Only rich people right now can seem to get testing kits. And again, you have a vaccine that's at least a year away. I only wish Donald Trump had responded half as good as the way of Obama had. But with Trump, again, and this is what we warned you about, the incompetence. Trump's an evil person. We know that. But it's not his evilness that was the worst part. No, it was evil plus incompetent. He cannot manage his way out of a paper bag. And when you are facing a pandemic health crisis, as we are now, it would be nice to have someone who could actually be and step in and be a manager. And so, look, one of the reasons that the response was so bad as well is that we didn't have the things in place that we did back when there was Ebola and swine flu. For example, Trump fired the entire pandemic response team 2 years ago, back in 2018. And then they decided not to replace him. This was Rear Admiral Timothy Zimmer, who departed from his post leading the global health security team on the National Security Council back in May of 2018. This was amid a reorganization of the council by John Bolton. Zimmer's team was disbanded at the time. So not just Trump, it's the Trump administration. John Bolton. Congratulations, John Bolton. Tom Bossert, who the Washington Post reported had called for a comprehensive biodefense strategy against pandemics and biological attacks, had also been fired the previous month. So no team. Not only that, but Trump had also cut the funding for the CDC, forcing the CDC to cancel its effort to help countries prevent infectious disease threats from becoming epidemic in 39 of 49 countries in 2018. You know what country was among those that abandoned their response? China. In the spring of 2018, the White House pushed Congress to cut funding for Obama-era disease security programs, proposing to eliminate $252 million in previously committed resources for the rebuilding of health systems in Ebola-ravaged Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea. Under fire from both sides, President Trump dropped the proposal to eliminate Ebola funds a month later, but other White House efforts included reducing $15 billion in national health spending and cutting the global disease-fighting operational budgets of the CDC, the NSC, DHS, and HHS, and the government's $30 million complex crisis fund had been eliminated. Why? Why did they go through all of these cuts? In order to pay for tax cuts for the rich. We gave $1.9 trillion to the rich and corporations. Look, these tax cuts mainly, for the most part, went to the rich and corporations, the lion's share. And so, well, of course, they had to cut the CDC budget. Well, of course, they had to fire these teams. We don't need those. We're not going to have a pandemic. What are you talking about? Oh, no, that doesn't happen here. Cut taxes. Let's cut taxes for the rich. That's why we're in the situation that we're in. That's why we don't have experts that are currently there trying to do something about this. Now that's why everybody's running around as if their head's cut off. It's complete and utter madness. And that's why everybody's in a panic, man. I mean, look, it's so rich to blame Obama for this. He's been in office for 3 years. This is your fault. But understand, this is what Trump does. He blames people. He can never take any sort of personal responsibility. I thought conservatives cared about personal responsibility. Trump didn't cause COVID-19, but his response to this, absolutely abysmal. He put out fake news, downplayed the seriousness of the issue, and more importantly, didn't allow the government to put forth the resources and the plans to mitigate the spread of this. I mean, the very basic things that you're supposed to do, Trump didn't do them. And now people will unfortunately lose their lives unnecessarily because of Trump's complete and total, utter incompetence and complete refusal to be a leader on this issue. All right. Moving on here. While the COVID-19 outbreak continues to close schools and threaten the paychecks of many American workers, the Trump administration is already continuing to continue its plans to cut food assistance to the poor. So now, Sonny Perdue, head of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, recently told House lawmakers during the Appropriations Subcommittee hearing that the Trump administration, their plans to basically institute work requirements on people who are getting food stamps, that is supposed to start April 1st. They had considered pushing back the implementation of work requirements, but then decided, no, we're not going to do that. Now, starting first, April 1st, people without a disability or children must work 20 hours a week to qualify for food assistance. Now, here's the thing. The economy is contracting. It's the stock market has lost a whole lot. We're actually in a bear market now. And because of COVID-19, people have been laid off from hotels, airlines, restaurants, cruise lines. These are industries that are very dependent on people traveling. But the CDC right now is urging people to stay home, to avoid crowds, to do basically social distancing is what it is. And so because of that, and because of a lot of the panic, you got a lot of industries that are being crushed, right? A lot of industries that rely on people that work minimum wages, basically, right? And so now the problem is that a lot of these people generally can't really afford to buy food on their own and are on food stamps, but they're also working. Well, now they lose their jobs, but with these work requirements, they still will not be able to get their food assistance at all. And so we're just letting people starve. Oh, great. Awesome. Now, I mean, if you can't work, you don't get a paycheck, and now you can't even get anything. And that's just unbelievably cruel. Unbelievably cruel. I know the argument from conservatives has been for putting these work requirements in. You shouldn't have to get food assistance because the economy's great. Just go get a job or get a second job. I mean, now our economy is in a bit of a free fall, and people are getting laid off. And yet, conservatives are saying, well, you still should have to work to get food assistance. Go out and find a job. But wait, everybody's getting laid off. What's going on here? I mean, it's another punch to the gut for poor Americans, right? The ones that are most vulnerable to COVID-19, the ones that most likely don't even have health insurance to begin with and can't afford a $400 emergency. Now, the White House originally had projected that about 700,000 people would lose their eligibility to SNAP. However, Lauren Bauer, a fellow with the Brookings Institution, who filed access to information requests for figures from all 50 states, has now projected the number of people losing assistance would be around 1.3 to 1.5 million. That's before COVID-19, right? She then later on added, well, now that number is going to be much, much higher thanks to that outbreak. Because again, there are people that are not going to be able to fulfill those work requirements because now a lot of the service sector jobs that had opened up under Donald Trump, and that's what fueled the low unemployment rate for quite some time. A majority of those jobs being created just being low-wage service sector jobs that pay, somewhere around an average of $18,000 a year. Well, now those are being either temporarily closed. People are getting laid off, or without, many without paid leave, because you don't get paid leave from a lot of those jobs. Well, now they're losing their food stamps. Great. So, yeah, this is what's going on. Now, Bauer added that it's going to cause harm to both the people who are eligible for SNAP, but it's also going to cause harm for the economy. And again, it's because our economy is based on consumer spending. And so if people don't have money for the basics, for food, then they can't spend that money at stores. And so on and on and on. This is a snowball that's rolled downhill. And look, it really does show the weaknesses of our system, right? So now, while the Trump administration is looking to crush the poor, House Democrats are at least trying to do the basics. They're pushing for an emergency package that would waive these work requirements for SNAP, expand nutrition assistance, and other measures. Now, the problem is Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell called House Democrats' Family First Response Act a, quote, ideological wish list. Trump also described the emergency relief package, which includes increased Medicaid funding, paid sick leave, and other things, as Democrats attempt to get some goodies that they haven't been able to get for the last 25 years. The bill, by the way, let me explain what's in this more in detail, right? It would require private health insurance to cover virus testing without copays, and to eliminate fees for patients covered by Medicare, Medicaid, Children's Health Insurance Program, and the Indian Health Service. The plan would pay laboratories for the tests of the uninsured through a new federal fund, and would increase the federal reimbursement rate to states to encourage them to expand Medicaid eligibility to more low-income individuals, and would also increase funding to states for unemployment insurance and offer incentives for states to reduce barriers to receiving benefits. Now, all of that, right, that's what the House Democrats are pushing for. But Mitch McConnell says, those are goodies. Just goodies. Really. Now, imagine calling that during an emergency pandemic, right? Goodies. You're just using this to get goodies like paid sick leave when we have a pandemic where people are told to not come to work. I mean, could you imagine the goodies? I mean, so unrealistic. Hey, let's give more tax cuts to the rich. Look, that's their plan. That's their plan. Give more tax cuts and more corporate welfare to these companies that are laying people off. We're going to give you guys money. We're going to give the airline industry money, right? We're going to give shale companies money during this. But the workers, screw off. We don't care about you at all. No. Go kick rocks. And that's what they're telling us, right? I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, they might as well just come out and say, why don't you poors just die already? We're sick of you asking for basic survival stuff. Oh, get out of our face. I mean, God, the entire response from the Republicans is to bail out corporations and the rich, right? To pressure the Fed. This is what Trump's been doing. He's been continuously pressuring Jerome Powell to lower interest rates. We're almost at a point where you can't really lower interest rates all that much and have any sort of discernible impact on the markets at all. Lowering interest rates is supposed to be a way to stave off recession. But wait a minute. We were supposed to have been in one of the best economies ever. That's what Donald Trump kept saying. The Republicans kept saying. Well, then why does Trump say lower interest rates, lower interest rates? Fed, you got to lower the interest rates even more. Because his economy is built on a house of cards. It's going to fall over. And it is falling over right now. And so, look, the Fed, by the way, yesterday just infused $1.5 trillion. This is the Federal Reserve of New York, $1.5 trillion into the market. That's low interest loans to the banks. We're going to bail out the banks, but we're not going to bail you out. Oh, no. Of course not. I mean, I think it's pretty clear where their priorities lie. They're going to help the banks. They're going to help the corporations. But when it comes to us, man, they just want us to suffer. And it's fairly obvious. All right. Let me just say, Al, you are amazing. Thank you. Another super chat here says, if they would rather die, said Scrooge, they had better do it and decrease the surplus population. That's from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. That basically encapsulates our modern rich. And, look, I forget who said it, but the Republican healthcare plan, by the way, is also don't get sick. And if you get sick, die quickly. Again, I forget who said that. My brain says Howard Dean, and I'm not sure why. Shut up, brain. Because I don't know if it's right. All right, anyway. Ooh, cold coffee. Okay. Let's move on. Let's do the one more direct COVID story, and then we'll go to a quick break. All right. Liberty University President Jerry Falwell Jr. had joined the brain trust over at Fox News, Fox and Friends, and declared that the world has not only deliberately overacted to COVID-19 solely to take down Donald Trump, but that he knows what could be the real culprits for COVID-19. Take a look.
It's just strange to me how so many are overreacting. The H1N1 virus in 2009 killed 17,000 people. It was the flu also, I think. And there was not the same hype. It was, you just didn't see it on the news 24/7. And it makes you wonder if there's a political reason for that. Impeachment didn't work, and the Mueller report didn't work, and Article 25 didn't work, and so maybe now this is their next attempt to get Trump.
It's their next attempt to get Trump. COVID-19. You've got to be kidding me. I mean, complete and utter insanity, right? All right, so now, look, Falwell said, oh, man, look, there just wasn't as much media attention on H1N1. Oh, maybe it's because we actually had a competent president during that time. Maybe could have been that had an actual strong plan. And look, let's be honest, right? H1N1 didn't quite have as much of a high fatality rate as COVID-19. The estimated fatality rate is around 3 to 4%. That's pretty high. And look, that's because this is new. We don't have any sort of immunity to it yet. There's no vaccines. There's no treatment yet. And so you have elderly people with compromised immune systems or underlying conditions. They are more at risk for this, right? Those are the facts, right? That's not what Jerry Falwell Jr. is saying. He's spreading disinformation and conspiracy theories, saying that, this whole thing, COVID-19, just a way to take down Donald Trump. I mean, it's just like the Mueller report. The Mueller report never killed anybody. I'm just saying. Nobody died from the Mueller report, right? it's ridiculous, right? And look, if Donald Trump had been a leader and actually took responsibility and had a good response to this and didn't fire the CDC team, right? Didn't fire the pandemic response team like he should have, or cut funding to the CDC and all of these different health organizations in the government to give tax cuts to his buddies on Wall Street, well, then we would have to give him some credit. Because, hey, look, I don't like Donald Trump politically, but wow, he sure did a great job on this COVID-19, right? We can't say that because that's not what happened. Look, there's no test kits that are widely available. We don't know how many people are infected. Everybody's running around in a panic, buying toilet paper and hand sanitizer. And it's all because there's no leadership. I don't even remember the stock market going into a bear market over H1N1 or, Ebola. I mean, maybe it's because Obama and his administration were competent and had a plan. Trump had no plan. He fired everybody that could have had a plan. And it's a disastrous response. But look, I said that Jerry Falwell Jr. has a suggestion, right, on what's really going on. Not just this as a plan to take down Trump, but where and who came up with this plan. And he's gonna tell Brian Kilmeade and the rest that next.
The owner of a restaurant asked me last night, he said, "You remember the North Korean leader promised a Christmas present for America back in December. Could it be they got together with China and this is that present? I don't know, but it really is something strange going on."
Really? So, oh no, see, I was talking to a restaurant owner last night. And then, it got me to thinking, please don't. Please don't do that. I was just talking to a random hog farmer, and he maybe thinks that Iran, they might have, the mullahs got together, see, and they got together with Hezbollah, and then they met with the Democrats and AOC, and they decided to release this COVID thing all over the place. And I've got absolutely no evidence on that whatsoever. Jerry Falwell Jr., folks, Fox News. What the hell? I mean, he's out there saying, they're herd. Let's go. It's the Chinese and the North Koreans that are coming up with a virus to kill thousands of our own people so that we can hurt them. Absolute, utter, effing madness. These people are unhinged, dangerous, and also deeply stupid. Everything is a conspiracy to them to take down Donald Trump. No. Here's the thing. I wish Donald Trump had been a leader on this. We were hoping that he would be a leader on this, right? And do something. Because you know what? You know who wanted this? Nobody. Nobody wanted this. I don't want this. I don't want people dying. If you're a decent, good human being, you do not want this to be happening right now. But these madmen, they are so goddamn deranged that they think, oh no, it's the media making a big deal out of it, right? It's making things up. And then, by the way, that's literally what they said. Oh, it's just the media making it up. It's not a big deal. It's just like a flu. No, it's not. The fatality rate is way bigger than it is the flu. It's not just a normal flu. Again, ridiculous, right? And then, by the way, when it does get real and it crashes the markets, well, then that's when they say, oh, now it's a problem. But still, media, Obama, and also now the North Koreans. No, these guys are mental. Jerry Falwell Jr. is a dangerous lunatic who is going to help people get killed. My God, man. Look, listen to the CDC. Listen to the health professionals, right? Get the facts. And I never thought I'd have to say this, right? But for the love of God, don't listen to the president of the United States. Again, that is in 2014, those words would have been completely alien to me. What are you talking about? Don't listen to the president of the United States. He's the president of the United States. He knows what he's doing, right? He's got advisors around him. But no, don't listen to the president of the United States because the man is a moron. He's a moron. He's extremely unintelligent and has shown once again that he cannot be trusted in a real emergency. This is what we have been warning about for years on this show. That, man, what if President Trump is actually faced with a real emergency and he can't handle it? And guess what? That's exactly what happened. Iceberg. We've hit it. We're going down. Okay, anyway. I'm going to take a quick break. We'll actually, you know what? We'll skip the break. But I do want to thank some patrons here. So let me just bring that up real quick. And thank you guys for supporting the show. Let's see. We have this is usually what I do on break is I go and look this stuff up to thank you guys. Okay. So I want to thank Sammy Osborne and Miriam Powell. Thank you. That's patreon.com/TYTNation. Let's get that up to 2,000 a month. So we need probably a few hundred patrons. So look, even if we've got, a couple of hundred patrons giving $3 a month, that'll do it. That'll bring us up to where we're sustainable. So patreon.com/TYTNation if you haven't already. And then channel memberships, of course. Let me go and find that real quick and bring that up and thank some patrons. I'm sorry, some channel members, because you guys helped the show greatly. All right. And I want to thank Fayellen Schwarzentraub and Hulit Nadaf. So thank you to those two names that were difficult to say, but I appreciate your support. And then there is some, let's see. Trump has declared a national emergency, by the way, breaking news. About freaking time. And let's see. Sarge Tech with a super chat as well. Saying, I want you to survive. Love you. Thank you, Sarge Tech. Love you guys too. I'd like to think that we're a bit of a family here and we all support each other. So I do appreciate that. Thank you so much. You guys are amazing. All right. Now let's move on here to some non-COVID-19 news, except for there's David Richardson with the super chat. Thank you. Fox News and the GOP are the band members playing in the Titanic, still playing away as the ship lifts up and goes under. I agree. And Postboy says Trump is the worst person to be in charge. All of our lives are on the line, but his only thought is me, money. No, you're absolutely right on that as well. This is an unprecedented disaster. And by the way, I should also add it's an unprecedented disaster because we don't have a president. We don't have a leader. We just have Donald Trump looking out for himself. Horrible. All right. So now let's go to a regulation that Trump actually likes. Whoa. President Donald Trump loves getting rid of Obama-era regulations. That is, unless he gets paid to keep them. So now, this is according to an interesting article that just came out today in Salon. Now, according to watchdog groups, the Trump administration has agreed to support Obama-era environmental regulations after receiving money from a trade group that spent over $700,000 at Trump's Miami resort. So this trade group goes in and says, well, we like this regulation, so we're going to spend a lot of money at one of your resorts. And now suddenly the Trump administration goes, oh, yeah, no, Obama regulations, love them. Love them. Let's keep it. So now, you guys know, and we've been reporting on this, Trump hates Obama regulations. He's been getting rid of them. In fact, the New York Times counted at least 95 environmental rules that were targeted by Trump, including many intended to roll back greenhouse gas emissions. Keep that in mind, by the way. Now, Trump also famously pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords, but apparently, in order to save all of that, all we had to do was just go to Trump's Miami Doral resort and spend tens of or hundreds of thousands of dollars. That goes right into Trump's pocket. So easy. We could have saved all these regulations. All right, anyway, here's some details. Now, in 2016, the Obama administration signed on to what's called the Kigali Amendment in the Montreal Protocol. Now, that's a 30-year-old treaty aimed at fixing the hole in the Earth's ozone layer. Well, it worked. We got together, and we did repair the hole in the ozone layer. I mean, a great victory for environmentalism, right? And, of course, of all these governments working together towards a common goal to protect the environment. So now, the Kigali Amendment had required phasing the phasing down of hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs. Now, those are greenhouse gases that are primarily used in things like air conditioners and refrigerators, or had been used before the Kigali Amendment. So now you have all of these, new air conditioners and new refrigerators, car air conditioners, etc., that are now using things that are not HFCs, right? And so now the State Department under Donald Trump had announced in 2017 that Trump continued to back the amendment by the most explicit and public way yet. So they said, Kigali Amendment, oh yes, we absolutely love the Kigali Amendment. The best thing the Obama administration has done ever. We back it explicitly. But it turns out the reason that they did back it explicitly is it was after heavy lobbying from the Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigerating Institute. That is a trade group that represents heating and cooling product manufacturers. Now, in this case, the lobbyists are actually on the side, the good side. They're the good guys. And because they're saying, oh, no, we like that amendment. We hate the fact that there is, that there could be a hole in the ozone layer. And of course, look, they also hate the fact that in their eyes, it could reduce manufacturing, right? Because they've all switched over to something different now. And so a change in the rules would not be beneficial to them whatsoever. So now, in fact, here's what they said about this. The United States believes the Kigali Amendment represents a pragmatic and balanced approach to phasing down the production and consumption of HFCs and therefore we support the goals and approach of the amendment. That was the State Department back in 2017. The AHRI praised the administration for backing the amendment one day later, and the group had increased its lobbying spending after Trump had taken office, spending more than $840,000 in 2017 and more than $1 million in both 2018 and 2019, according to data from the Center for Responsive Politics. Along with the increased spending to lobby the president, the group also spent more than $700,000 at the Trump National Doral Resort for its annual meeting in 2017, according to a tax return flagged by Crew. That is a watchdog group. The payment was made less than 2 weeks before the Trump administration announced its support for the policy. So apparently all you have to do is go and spend money at Trump's bedbug resort. Remember, the Doral is known as the bedbug resort because they had a huge problem there. But this lobbyist group, they says, well, how do we get to Donald Trump? Well, I know. We go spend a ton of money at his resorts because Donald Trump has not divested from his businesses, right? Yes, he has his sons that run it, but he hasn't divested, which means that money goes back into his pockets. It is clear personal corruption. And these companies know it. And at least in this case, you had a trade group that was actually doing the right thing, yes, for selfish reasons, but was saying, well, you know what? No, we're going to keep this regulation to actually reduce greenhouse gases. And so we're going to lobby you and bribe you in the way that we know how, because we know that you're the most receptive to it in this way, in order to keep that. I mean, it's so obvious corruption, right? So now what's interesting about this is that it didn't work. Now, the policy had stalled because the administration has failed to submit the amendment to the Senate. So maybe there's a lot of the other Republicans who didn't get money from this are saying, oh, no, it's still an Obama regulation, so we still absolutely hate it, right? Now, that goes to the AHRI planning another big event at Trump's resort, advertising a, quote, leadership forum scheduled for 2021. The AHRI event was one of 120 events held by special interest groups at Trump's properties, according to Tracking by Crew. So this shows, of course, just how many of these companies are doing this very thing. The groups and political campaigns and committees have spent millions at Trump's properties since he took office, despite spending next to nothing at Trump properties in the years preceding 2016, because they know how to bribe him. The Trump re-election campaign has also paid millions to the president's own properties. Trump even proposed holding the next G7 summit at the Doral Resort before caving in the face of bipartisan pressure and international criticism. So, look, I think it's obvious corruption. Obvious corruption is obvious. Yes, these companies know exactly how to reach Donald Trump to try to get things done. And of course, the kind of person that Trump is that he has no core beliefs. His only core belief is, how is it going to benefit me? What am I going to get out of it? And so I guess, look, if you're Tom Steyer, think about this, right? If you're Tom Steyer, you care about the environment, right? You care about climate change. Why don't you just go and spend $1 million at Trump's Doral Resort and say, if we do that, though, I want you to go take us back into the Paris Climate Accord. I wonder if that would happen. I wonder if that would work. I mean, it's only $1 million or $100 million. I think Tom Steyer, he's worth several $1 billion at this point. I guess, why not at this point? There's going to be corruption. Might as well use it to your advantage. Okay, anyway. And I'm kidding about that, by the way. I think we should get all the money out of politics. And because not only that, but Donald Trump out of office. All right. One more story here real quick. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez keeps wondering why the banks get bailed out while American citizens don't. Now, on Thursday, the Federal Reserve of New York announced their plans to inject the stock markets with $1.5 trillion in emergency low-interest loans. Now, that's, of course, in order to help ease the stock market after one of its worst days on record. So now, over the last week, we entered a bear market, meaning 20% of the market is just gone. Twice this week, we have traders have tripped the emergency circuit breaker, which means if there's so many trades that are trending down, and a lot of these trades are handled, of course, automatically by computers, that, it would basically snowball into even more gigantic losses. So once you hit a certain threshold, it kicks off. It stops all trading. And so that's to prevent even an even worse sell-off than we already have. And so that's tripped twice in this week. We've had a gigantic loss. In fact, all of the gains out of the Trump administration Gone. Just gone. It's a disaster. So now, the Fed, again, yes, has lowered interest rates and then put all that emergency funding. So now progressives like AOC, she's over here looking at that $1.5 trillion and saying, well, now, wait a minute. That's actually exactly how much Americans, young Americans, are saddled with student loan debt. Well, if we can bail them out, why can't we bail students out, right? And here's what she tweeted, quote, the amount the Fed just injected almost covers all student loan debt in the U.S. There's absolutely no excuse for not pausing student debt collection, planning for mortgage and rent relief, etc. We need to care about working people as much as we care for the stock market. So now look, all of those are good ideas, right? Yes, I'm in favor of canceling student loan debt and making public universities and universities and public colleges tuition free, right? Paid for, of course, by taxes on the ultra wealthy, mainly a wealth tax. And so, look, that's what I'm in favor of. That's what AOC is in favor of. And of course, AOC endorsed Bernie Sanders, who's also in favor of this. So he's the only one that says, hey, we should cancel all student loan debt. And so understand that $1.5 trillion basically given in low interest loans to the banks, you could have wiped out all that student debt. But as a country, we seem to only care about the wealthiest in America. And so now, as far as the other things that were, that she was talking about, well, paid sick leave is another thing that we don't have here in America. Other countries look at us as if we're barbarians because they have paid sick leave, and they not only have paid sick leave, but they have universal health care as well. So that, when you have to take a day off and you still get paid for it, you can also go to the doctor and not have to pay a premium copay or deductible. But here in America, we've got all that, plus we don't get paid for time off. Again, we're absolute barbarians. Now, having paid sick leave during a pandemic would be especially helpful because, again, people wouldn't go to work and because they wouldn't have to, work to pay the rent and mortgages and stuff and that's why we're having to talk about that relief as well in those things. But the whole point is not to spread the disease. I mean, there are people out there that can't afford a $400 emergency. You think they're going to self-quarantine? No, of course not. They're like, hey, no, ride or die, got to go pay the bills. Bills don't stop, right? And that's what she's calling for, right? Unemployment insurance, rent relief, all those things are doable. All of those things are in pieces of legislation that are trying to work its way through the House. And you know who's blocking them? Republicans, of course. So now, what we're doing instead, of course, is propping up the banks, giving emergency bailouts to the shale companies, to airports, and other industries that are affected by this, but not bailing out the workers. And so this is a good example of corporate socialism. And so it's a complete and utter disaster. And she asks great questions. I mean, again, $1.5 trillion, even not taking in the effect, into account the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic and all this stuff should be necessary, right? Even that, we're the only country in the world that has that high of student loan debt. $1.5 trillion. Doesn't exist anywhere else, only exists in America, and yet we can't even do relief on that scale. It's ridiculous, and it's because we live in an oligarchy. Oh, it's true. We do. We're basically, the government is controlled by a handful of very small, very wealthy, influential special interests and billionaires. They use their power, they use their money, their influence, legalize bribery to bribe off the politicians who will then write laws in their favor. And by the way, these politicians are also incredibly wealthy. And so even the poorest politician, Bernie Sanders, has a net worth of a couple of $1 million. Now, look, to be fair, he did that by selling books, right? But congressional, being a congressional government, person, being a congressman, pays $147,000 a year. So you're going to get decent money. But anyway, so now, again, we live in an oligarchy, right? And we're in the middle of a public health crisis. And so, yes, maybe we should have a government that represents us and not the rich. But it's very clear that it does represent the rich. Again, right now, we have people that can't afford a $400 emergency, making $18,000 a year, being told to self-quarantine. And the people are being laid off without pay. Right now, hotels are getting hit. Restaurants, airlines, the service economy is falling apart. And in America, that's really a huge part of the economy. If that falls over, so does everything else. But what we've seen before is that Trump and the Republicans are doing nothing about it because they don't actually care. Whereas, of course, AOC, Bernie Sanders, progressives, we do care about these issues. And I think we should be asking, now, wait a minute, how are we going to pay for these bailouts for the rich? Because they always ask us, how are we going to pay to bail out the poor? How are we going to pay for Medicare for all? How are we going to pay for, canceling student debt? How are we going to pay for all this? Well, how are we going to pay for, taking care of the billionaires and putting them over the rest of us? That's the real question we should be asking. Okay. All right. That's it. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you. Zach Sherman, thank you. Zach, I appreciate the super chats. I do appreciate everybody who's been donating to the fundraiser as well. Wow, you guys are amazing. We're already at $95. So thank you very much. Share that wherever you can. And you are helping keep independent progressive media on the air. So thank you so much. Hopefully you guys have a great weekend. Stay safe. That's all I can really say, other than I love you guys and thank you so much. All right. We'll see you guys on Monday. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you guys on Monday.
Please clap.
Why? You're getting nervous, man.
Oh, wow, I'm sorry. You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.